Hello, everybody. Uh, how is everyone is doing? Uh, if you can leave your comments so I know how everyone is doing. Hello. Yes. So what we will be doing today? So the agenda for today is to get to know about Stripe API, since this is Global Hack Week, where we're diving deep into API and API concepts. Um, so I thought it would be interesting to host a session about uh, one of the leading uh, API providers, Stripe, who facilitates with accepting payments for e-commerce applications. Uh, so so my plan for today, we have about 2 hours, and so first I wanted to start with introduction. Like, my name is Nadir, and this is my third session I'm hosting this week. The previous ones were about Linux scripting and Open Banking API, where we played with Plaid API using Postman. Um, so this time we'll be looking at Stripe API. Um, so as usual, I wanted to split the whole 2 hour session, into sections. In the first part, we will be uh, looking at some theory, so theory behind Stripe API. We try to understand um, what it is and what are about its capabilities, and and so that will be a theory a little bit. And in the second half, we will be building a Spring Boot application that uses Stripe API to accept credit card details from users, from clients, and then charge that card for certain amount, and then gives feedback saying that if the charge was successful or it's not, or if it's declined, then says the reason. Yeah, I see some of our users, they have heard about a Stripe before. Yeah, I agree. It's amazing. When I was learning about it, I was like, its capabilities like growing, because I checked their website, especially developer section, uh, before hosting this session, and it changed a lot. Previously, they were using some legacy, some like API called Charge API for payments, but now they introduced new flow that supports more payment methods. I believe we'll look into those, both old and new method of charging in this session. So let's start. I wanted to start with telling like what Stripe is and how it helps us. So Stripe is mm, it's a cloud-based service, actually. So everything Stripe offers is located in the cloud. So we don't need to download anything to our local machine. Um, and Stripe allows businesses and individuals like us to receive payment over the internet. So let's say we are a small business owner or entrepreneur, and we sell flowers online, right? And we want to obviously accept payment online, since we have e-commerce website, assuming that we have e-commerce website where we put our flowers on display, and before we send those flowers to our customers, we want to make sure that we receive payments from them. So I just wanted to verify if anyone having difficulty hearing my voice. Is it loud enough, or should I speak up, or be a bit quieter, or let me know in the comments, please, so I don't like shout or stay silent. Okay, good. Thank you. All good. Thank you. So yeah, as I said, Stripe helps individuals and businesses to accept payment over the internet, and Stripe offers for us, for developers, various libraries to make our life easier. So in this session, we're going to use one of those libraries. So those libraries are actually split into like two broad categories. So Stripe has client-side libraries, which are based on JavaScript and which are also based on native mobile operating system APIs, and also server-side libraries, which support languages like Java, Node.js. So in this session, we'll be using one of those server-side libraries, Java library. So why do we need to use those libraries? Can't we just talk to Stripe API endpoints directly, like we've done before, right? So API providers, they publish the API online, and they provide nice documentation, right? And then they have those endpoints. And most of the time, what we do is we just, for example, take Postman and try to invoke those API endpoints, and understand like how it works, what feedback it gives us. So this is one way to interact with APIs. Another way is to using those libraries that here in this example. So Stripe provides those server-side libraries to offer us a layer of abstraction. Okay, because payment, from what I know, is a bit sophisticated concept. So there are many ins and outs for payment. So we are not expert in payments. Probably don't know like some corner cases where payment may fail, or cases where payment may succeed. We just want accept data like credit card payment information from customers and send it to Stripe, and we want Stripe give us back some feedback saying payment is successful or payment has failed. So this is what we want. Okay, so for that, so we need this layer of abstraction in order to not to deal with complexity behind payment. So those server-side libraries offer that abstraction. So we don't have to deal with card details directly ourselves. So we delegate this to Stripe. And so before we actually communicate with Stripe API using those client-side libraries, we first need to register with a Stripe account, and we need to receive API keys. So let me first open a web page for Stripe. gonna share my screen so we all know what steps we need to take. What stripe.com. So in a moment, I'm sharing my screen. Okay. So you should be seeing my screen. I can hide my face. I'll put my face here or there. Yeah, to make use of the screen space efficiently, I'm gonna hide my face for now so we can have like full canvas at our disposal. So this is Stripe's homepage. So what we're gonna do is, so we have dashboard here. So I think I have. Let me know if it's big enough to see. Like I don't have to zoom in or out, right? So as you see, there's a link called dashboard. So let's click on this dashboard. And so our goal is to obtain API keys here. So since I've already registered, I have my profile set up already. And if you want to code along with me, please register at dashboard stripe.com. Can I share link in the chat? So yeah, one of our users has just arrived. Yeah, you're not late to the party. We're just getting started. So yeah, if you want to code along with me, please go to this website, dashboard.stripe.com, and please register. So the goal of registration is to obtain API keys for our project. I'm gonna add my face to make it a bit personal. So yeah, this is Stripe homepage, and so assuming that we registered, right? So it gives us two types of accesses. First is called test access, and the second is live access. So by default, we're given test access. So whenever we build our integration with Stripe API, we use test account. But when we finish our integration, all this testing, and when we deploy our solution online, then we can ask for live credentials. So for that, we need to activate. Because we're still using test. I'm still using test account. I don't have access to live credentials. That's why it says test data, as you see here. It's highlighted as test data, and the mode, it says I'm using a test environment. I cannot switch it because I haven't activated my profile. Activation takes a little bit time, I think. I've never tried it, but I assume there are some process that we need to go through. But focus for today is to test the integration. We don't need any live credentials. So assuming you're logged into Stripe dashboard, go to developer section, and under developer section, you see overview submenus here. So if you go to API keys submenu, we'll find keys. So Stripe gives us two types of keys: publishable public key in the form of string of alphanumeric digits, alphanumeric characters. And also we have secret key. Okay, I need to provide my passwords. Yeah, let's incorrect password. Okay, try again. Okay, so this is my secret key. So yeah, you can have your own. I'm gonna change it after the session anyway, so I'm okay with sharing it. So yeah, so you're given public and private key. So we use those two keys, both of these keys, when we talk to Stripe to process the payment. So this is how we get started. I'm gonna hide it for now, so those two pairs of keys, we need one, and those same for live account. So if you ever sign up for live account, so we can, you will see that you will receive similar pair of private and public keys. So let's look. Let's try to understand how Stripe works, right? So the best way to understand it is to actually see, try see it in action, obviously. But before that, I wanted to show you how Stripe actually works in general, what its flow looks like. So I'm gonna pull up date information about Stripe API. Just a second. So the purpose is to see how what the, try to understand the internals of Stripe API first before we actually start coding. So if you see my screen here, so I switched to Stripe docs page. So if you can go to here. So one of our users says, "Hi, no, I have received some warnings in regarding my GitHub repos, which contain my API keys. But I code using an API key without showing API key in the code. Confused. Oh, okay. Yeah, this is a good question. So question is, how do we code using our API keys without actually revealing it in the code? So there are many different methods, I think. So so we have when we build an application, we usually have front end and back end side of application, right? So front end side has is a side which interact with clients. It's downloaded to client side user agents like browser, right? So any public keys, I would say, can be used in front-end applications. So I think that's what it's meant for, public keys. But private keys for APIs, it's better to keep them on backend side of application, because backend will be living in our server. It won't be available. It won't be accessible by any type of actors, bad or good actors of our application. So saving, keeping any private keys related to APIs on backend is a good practice. And also, specifically in Spring Boot applications, for example, we create an application.properties file. This is where we store all the API related information. I mean, API key related information. We'll look into this a little bit later, but for now, let's resume. I hope I answered your question. Yeah, I will show you how we deal with it in the second half of the session. So if you go to payment section of Stripe Docs, and there's a section about APIs, go to API tour, and so core concepts. So this explains like what Stripe API is all about, right? So it says everything in your Stripe account is an object. So we've just created a Stripe account, right? So from developers' point of view, everything we see in our Stripe in our Stripe account. Let's see. Let it be like invoicing, subscriptions, products, and prices, right? You probably see here. So these describe the capabilities of Stripe API. So it can handle in-person payments, multi-party payments. All of these concepts are objects actually. So either we can use an API or not. So behind the scenes, Stripe creates objects. So actually, there are several ways of interacting with Stripe. So I'm gonna come back to this in a moment. So let's say we have a concept called, let's say we want to like accept payment and through Stripe, and that payment information is stored in an object called represented in an object called payment intents. For example, or we want to check out. We want to put like checkout widgets on our website, or we want to let's say receive subscription fees for our services, or send an invoice to our clients. All of these are represented using objects. And so you can see that Stripe is helping us by abstracting, by giving this abstraction layer. So we don't have to deal with the intricate details of payment flow by ourselves. What we see is just an object from Stripe's point of view, and we can directly talk to those objects, and we don't have to worry about how the payment is deducted from from client's bank account, and how it's debited from one account and credited to merchant's account. So all these complications are hidden by Stripe, because Stripe gives us abstraction layer. So this is very important concepts to understand. So yeah, objects, right? And Stripe offers several like objects, and they are grouped into two sections. So high-level objects, as you see, this is like actually YouTube video, but we don't have to watch it. I'm going to explain it shortly. So high-level objects and low-level objects, right? So when we want to create payment, when we want to charge our client for a certain amount, we use usually one of the two low-level objects. One of them is payment intents, and another is called charges. So they are called like payment intents API and charges API. So what's the difference between them? So they're quite similar to each other, but the difference is charges has been designed, charges API has been designed earlier, and it supports only payments in US and Canada, I believe, and it's only limited to credit or debit cards, as far as I know. But payment intents API is more modern, and it supports more regions and more types of payments. So for our purpose, for today's purpose, we just only concentrate on charges API, which does the job that we want it to do, meaning that we want to deduct a single a specific amount of money from clients or customers' card, right? So these two are low-level objects, so that we directly deal with those low-level objects. And there are also high-level objects provided by Stripe. So if we want some checkouts widget to be displayed on our website, or if we want to send invoice to our clients, or charge for subscription, meaning that that charge will be periodical, right? Subscription is by definition represents like some period. It lasts for a certain period, and charges happen in cyclic fashion. So for all these complexities, are handled by high-level objects that Stripe provides. So for today's session, we don't deal any of these high-level objects, but our focus will be charges API, which is a low-level object. Okay, let me check the time. We spent already half an hour. Yeah, I think we have a good timing here. So before we switch to coding, let me cover one more thing. So yeah, everything is an objects in Stripe API because Stripe provides us a layer of abstraction. Again, I'm just repeating myself. So if we go to overview, online payments overview. So here you can see we can integrate with Stripe API in many ways. So one of the ways we can use no coding. We can just do no coding, but still integrate with API using payments links. This is not what we're doing today. Another way is called Stripe Checkout. This is like a widget that you can put on your web page, and it requires a little bit of coding. So payment links, they require no coding because what you receive is just a link to payment Stripe's internal system, and customer clicks on that link and everything is handled on Stripe side. And another method is through dealing with Stripe elements. This is something which not sure what it is, honestly. Should be something also high level. And the way of integration that we're interested is through API. This is what we're doing. So it requires most coding integration effort. So we'll use our own UI to show what's being done. We show this UI to our clients, and yeah, So it supports tax integration. We don't deal with taxes for today. Yeah, so we're dealing with most coding, the method that requires most coding. Okay. And I wanted to show you flow that we're gonna follow in our coding. So we're slowly moving to coding part. Let me share the screen. So if you see in the screen, so there are in our project that we're going to build now using Spring Boot, there are three main actors, right? Three main actors. The first one is a client, meaning a client application. So we're gonna have like a client application that accepts, that provides user interface to a person, so person can enter their payment details, card information, expiry date, and that's this is what first actor, and second actor is server. So server is a basically server-side application that will be talking to that will be receiving requests from client application, and the third actor is Stripe itself. So Stripe's API is a third participant, and as you see in this picture, we'll be using Stripe's charges API, and we use it by sending post request to this endpoint /v1/charges, and Stripe API also is available through other endpoints as well, but for today's session, we'll be only concentrating on this charges endpoint. So, so that being said, yeah, I wanted to show this image because it tells more story than me talking all the time. So yeah, this is the flow we're gonna follow. So again, to sum up, so user goes to checkout page here on our web page, and they there will be a button, right? And then user clicks the button, and the Stripe checkout page, a dialog will pop up, and it will accept card details, and it will show amount, how much client will be billed for. And yeah, so this is what we're going to do. So let me start. So as I said, we'll be building Spring Boot-based application. So first, before we actually start building Spring Boot application, I wanted to show that there are already templates available for us to get started. We don't have to start from scratch. So if you go to Spring, start.spring.io, so I'm going to share link here. So this is a Spring so-called starter page where you can get started with creating Spring Boot application. So if everyone is following, or if anyone is following, please let me know in the comments so we are on the same page. Say something, please. Okay, if anyone is following, just or left behind, please let me know in the comments so we can I can like pause and answer your questions. So Spring Initializer. So the way we get started with Spring is first we need to choose what type of project build tool we want to use in our Spring application. So I choose Maven and I choose language here. And I choose Spring Boot version. So 3.5 looks fine. And since we have chosen Maven, right, so we need to define group, artifacts, and other details. So for group, I say com MLH, and for artifact, I say stripe integration. I spelled integration. Demo project for Spring Boot, yeah. So I'm gonna have jar chosen and generate. So I say generate. So it asks me to download this generated project. So I download it to desktop. So Stripe integration. Okay. So I download it to my desktop, and so I can open it using an editor of my choice. So for this session, I'm going to use IntelliJ as my editor. So let me open my project using IntelliJ. So I'm going to share what I'm doing in a moment. Trust project, okay. Okay, let me share my page where I am dealing with my sample project, which I just downloaded from Spring Initializer website. So as you can see, so I just opened my Stripe integration project, which I've just downloaded from Spring Initializer page. So it has some files, some structure already built in, so I don't have to deal with building the structure myself. So since I've chosen Maven as my project management tool for this Spring Boot application, I'm given with POM XML file, as you see, and as you see, there are structure already built into the project. So Maven's typical structure has source folder, source directory, and inside there are main and test directories. And main contains Java directories along with the resources, and it has further internal structure, and which corresponds to this package path, com MLH Stripe integration, right? So whenever you see this package name, you can assume that this class, Stripe integration application class, is located under the Java. There is also com directory. Under com, there's also MLH, and under MLH, Stripe integration. And finally, inside Stripe integration directory, you see the actual class file here. So this is a very minimal Spring Boot application, which doesn't do much. So we can attempt to start and see what it does. At least doesn't do much, but it did something. It started and it exited immediately. So what we want to do is we want in our application to have a a container, Tomcat container built in, because this is how we gonna run our application using container. So for that, we need to add one more integration, one more dependency. So that dependency is called Spring Boot Starter Web. Okay, so we don't really need this build here because I have Maven built in to my local machine, and you see this. It does not. So I added this Spring Boot Starter Web. So what it does is, so it provides us Tomcat container where we're gonna run our Java application. So far it's red. It complains. It says what it says. Dependency not found. Okay. The reason it says so is because our local repository does not contain this dependency yet. So the way Maven works is Maven has a concept called repository, right? And those repositories contain dependencies. And whenever we need our project depends on some other external code. So Maven handles this for us. So Maven has some central repository where dependencies are stored. Let's say our project depends on Tomcat, right? Because we need to use Tomcat in our Stripe integration project. But we don't want to go to Tomcat's website, download it. We can do it, obviously, but it's a bit complicated. Like we need to configure it, find where we downloaded it, and point our application to the Tomcat container. It's multi-step process. We don't want to do that. Instead, we want Maven to download Tomcat dependency to Tomcat for us and configure it automatically. So way we do it, we just say include this dependency tag inside our POM file. Okay, so this dependency will be downloaded from Maven central repository, and it will download it to our local repository. So our machine where we are developing our application has local storage, local repository where Maven downloads all the dependencies there. So it can refer to those dependencies instead of referring to its central remote repository. I hope that is clear. So as you see, it's red now. It complains, cannot find this specific dependency in our local repository. So what we're gonna do is we just click on this load Maven changes. So it just goes, its remote repository finds the dependency, downloads it to our local repository. So we see something happen here behind the scenes, and now it's turned like it's red is gone. So meaning it accepted this change. Okay, now we have Tomcat set up. Let's try to run this application, what it does, to see what it does. Oh, wow. Here we have feedback saying Tomcat initialized with port 8080. Great, we have Tomcat now. We started Tomcat and Spring application is still running. This time it didn't exist. I mean exit. Uh, so how can we make sure that it's running? Yeah, we can go and invoke. We can go and type localhost, and this port 8080 Tomcat should be listening to that port. So it should give us some feedback. Let's go and do that. Okay, I'm just typing localhost and 8080. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. Share. As you see, no, you don't see yet. As you see, so it doesn't recognize yet. So, well, it opens the web page, but at localhost 8080, but it says nothing. There are no mappings for this page, right? So what we're trying to do is just trying to open the root folder. I mean slash, right? Nothing is mapped there. So the next step would be to map something so we see that it's running. So I'm gonna go back to my application. Okay. So I'm gonna share my development, share screen. So again, I'm back to my application here. I want to add some controller, like let's say I want to create new Java class and call it Stripe integration controller. So why I'm calling this specific in a specific way Stripe integration controller? The reason is because I'm following, because I'm using this web dependency, right? Boot starter web. So that means I'm also using MVC design pattern. So MVC design pattern comes with, it has like three main sections, participants. So it has model, view, and controller part. So what you see, UI part is, it's generally called a view part, and view, and besides view, there's also controller and model parts. So model and view interact with each other through controller. So this is like this is how interaction between MVC happens, right? So for now, so I'm gonna do, I'm gonna say so so let me find what I'm trying to do. So so I'm gonna write a method, and so I'm gonna say a method which returns some some mm, some like text, right? String. So it returns string, and we can call this method as index. So whenever we launch our web application, we want this to return. We want it to show something. Let's say we go with tradition, say hello world, world. So now, we need to now map this method to endpoint. So what we're going to do is we do we're going to create a request mapping and say it map this endpoint request mapping to slash, meaning that whenever we open the home page, we are greeted with hello world. So this is what we're trying to do. Okay. So let's see if this does the trick. I'm just checking the comment section. I see no comments from users. Okay. Let me know if you want me to stop and explain what I'm doing. So I'm trying to map my method to this endpoint. So this is important for our Stripe application to make sure that we're going to refer to many endpoints in our application. So we need to make sure that we have basics internals already working. We still have more than an hour, so I hope I should be able to finish by the end of next hour. So let's start. Yeah, so started Spring integration application. That's fine. And then let's see if it works. So I'm thinking how I can switch between screens, because every time I have to stop the screen, pick new source, and then let me stop. Okay. Okay. So let me refresh. So I think request mapping. I think I need to add some more here. So I need to add this REST controller, because I see it's not functioning. It's not. So if I need to add the REST controller here. So it represents that this is actually a controller that has endpoint mapped. So let's rerun my application. Okay. Okay. Yeah. Now I have my hello world here. I can show you. Okay. Let me show my screen where you can see the page I'm receiving. So here, so now I have hello world running available. So the way how I achieved this, so I added this REST controller to my class, and also mapped one of the I also mapped that method to one of the endpoints. So now there was a question about how do we store the API keys in our source code. So I'm gonna show you that now, and then we can take like 5-minute break before we can start like integrating with Stripe API. Okay, so let me show that again. So I'm gonna share again my. I don't know why. Maybe it's on the Mac, but I have to switch between web page and native app window by stopping and starting screen sharing again on StreamYard. Yeah, I have to see if there are any better ways to do that. So I'm back to my development environment. So now there were questions about storing the Stripe API. How do we store it, right? So so now let me go and show you where we can store it. So if you go under resources, there's a file called application properties, right? So this is where usually I store my API keys. So I say Stripe. If you remember, we have two types of API keys, right? Public and private. Let's say we want to store both in here, so it will be available in for our source code. Stripe public API and Stripe private API key. So where do we populate? How do we populate this? So again, we go back to our Sprite dashboard, right? And go there and read the API keys from there, and then we can just copy paste it. So what I'm doing now is going to my dashboard, and I went under API key section, and I copied my publishable key, which is public key. I just pasted it here, and also my secret key, just copied and pasted it here. Okay. And now let's say once we store it in the application properties, how do we read this? Is there any way to read it? Yes. So the way we read it is, say we want to read it to our variable inside our controller, right? Stripe public key, right? And so obviously we can assign it here, but we don't want to do that. We have a better way to do it. So because since we're using Spring, we can use value and here, and we need to define value, the name of the variable from where we will be reading it. So in our case, we have Stripe public API key, right? And then we go there, and then we use $, opening brackets, sign close. And we save it, and then so we want to display it my public Stripe API key is, and then we just Stripe public key. We say Stripe public key. Okay. Yeah. So what we're doing now is we're taking the value of this variable and then injecting it to this string variable, local, I mean, field variable, field classes field, and then we use reading from this field in our method. So sorry, I didn't start. Yeah, this is what I've done. So I added so I added a new field. It's called Stripe public key, and then I'm injecting Stripe public key value from our application properties file right in here. If you see, so I copied and pasted the API public and private API keys from Stripe dashboard, and now they are available for us for consumption in here, and I am passing it to I mean using it inside my method body. So now let's try to run the application and see if it does the work. So let's go and check localhost 8080. Okay, I see it's coming. So let me show you. Present. Okay, Chrome tab. So as you see, now it shows like, hello world, my public Stripe API key is this. Okay, so yeah, answering to earlier question about API keys, where we store. So we store it in application properties file, inside the application properties file. So let's take 5-minute break, and I will come back in 5 minutes so we can resume our coding. Most interesting part is coming up next. We'll be dealing with actual integration of Stripe API. So I'll see you in 5 minutes. I will put a like a banner. I cannot find banner. Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I'll see you in 5 or 4 minutes. Okay. I'm gonna mute myself for now. Hello. I'm back. I hope others are also back. So I'm reading reading comments here. Use process environment. And yeah. So yeah, is it related to Spring framework process environment? Like put the environment commit. Okay. Yeah. Puts files into, if you put files into git ignore file names, so that those files will not be part of git repository, so they will not be committed. Yeah, yeah, thanks. I'm also back. Okay. Yeah, let's resume where we stopped. So last time I was showing you this page. This is the page. So like we have skeleton of Spring Boot-based application where we're talking to Stream API. Actually, we're not talking to Stream API yet. We have just skeleton Spring Boot application, which demonstrated that we can actually have like invoke an endpoint in our application, and then we can present something back to the user into the view. So we're following again MVC design pattern. So we have view here, as you see, and we have controller, which we have coded like moments ago. And we're gonna add some models inside. So now we will be actually using several like dependencies to resume with coding. So one of those dependencies is Stripe's server-side libraries that we explored in the first half of the section. So why do we need to use Stripe's server-side libraries? Again, this provides us a layer of abstraction so that this simplifies our coding. So we don't have to deal with the internals of payment, credit cards, or whatever. So we can include that dependency inside our POM XML file. And besides that, we also use a template engine. So template engine is necessary to display content to the user. So template engine we're going to use is called Timeleaf. It's used in, or Timeleaf. I don't know how it's pronounced actually. I pronounce it like Timeleaf. And yeah, and we're going to use also Lombok dependency, so that helps us with avoiding boilerplate code. So again, we don't want to spend too much time on understanding like details of Stripe API, how it deals with payment, it hides it, provides us abstraction layer. So the way we do is, so we'll have our endpoint and we invoke that endpoint, and then it invokes Stripe's endpoints behind the scenes. So we don't even see it happening because Stripe API's server-side library hides this complexity as well. Okay, so let's switch to our coding environment. So I'm gonna add okay, stop sharing. I'm gonna add my window where we're doing Stripe integration to stream. Yeah, this is back to our development environment where we have stopped. Now, we want to get more productive. Um, so we have our private key, public private API key, public API keys all saved in application properties file. Now we want to actually build talk to Stripe API. For that, we need to include two several dependencies, which I just described. So what we're gonna do is, so I have those dependencies already pre-written, so I don't have to type them. I'm just gonna go and insert them here to save time. So again, so I added timey leaf. So we need this dependency for view purposes. So we present whatever controller returns to view, so clients can be informed. And we have also Stripe dependency to Stripe. So we included here stripe.java, meaning that we're using Stripe's Java server-side library, and Lombok that helps us with creating data transfer objects. So when we create those objects, DTOs for short, we don't have to create setters and getters or any other methods to compare objects. So it's all handled by Lombok. So that really saves time. So again, they are red. We're gonna reload Maven project by clicking this button, which means now those dependencies are downloaded to our local repository in Maven. Okay. And now we'll build a service. So I'll start by creating a method, a class called Stripe service. So the reason for this is that so we want to talk to Stripe API and create. We'll be using charge. So Stripe API again, like has multiple sub APIs, right? So payment intent API, charge API, and many others. So we'll be using specifically that charge API. And so for that, we need this Stripe service. So let's go ahead and define this as a service. So I'm going to use service annotation. So this is, again, to let Spring know that we're creating actually a service. And so we're going to have, to talk to Stripe API, we need to send Stripe's private key, API private key. So that is already stored here in application properties. Okay, so we're going to use the same that's the same way that we created before. This time it will not be public, but it will be private. Stripe private API key, and here again Stripe private key. Yeah. Yeah, add Maven dependency. Okay, I'm gonna add my import. Yeah. So we have Stripe. Now we can inject the value for private API key to this variable, so we can deal with it later. And now we need to assign that variable to Stripe's API, Stripe's internal API key variable. For that, since we're creating service, right? So when service is constructed, when services instance is created, we can assign that, we can do that assignment. So for that, we use, we can create like some init method, right? And inside init method, we can say Stripe has API key and assign that Stripe a private key to this API key. So again, as you see, this Stripe class is coming from Stripe's server-side library, right? So we can go and check here. So it's, as you see, it's going to inside this jar file, which Stripe provided us. So we're assigning API key to here, to this variable. So this is how the class decompiles. It says decompiled class file, as you see. Okay, so I'm gonna close this for now. And I want to make sure that this assignment happens whenever service class is constructed. After service class is constructed, so this class doesn't have any explicit constructors. It has, that means it uses default no argument constructor when we create instance out of it. So once that instance is created, we want this specific method to be called. So for that, this method will be called after the construction happens, meaning post construct. So I think I picked up the wrong annotation. Words. Yeah, I think. Okay, yeah, that should do it. Now I want to so I want to create the actual method where we talk to charge API. So for that, I say public. So we want this charge API to return as charge object. And so we call this method charge. Okay. And so I'm gonna do, so again, this refers to charge class that is part of Stripe's server-side library. And so we want, whenever we call this charge object, I mean method, we want to pass charge charge DTO as part of this charge, as part of method signature charge. So we haven't created this yet, so we're gonna create it in a moment. But and so basically, so we want to create like a parameters map of parameters. And then we're going to assign those parameters to a charge object to create actual so that Stripe API's server-side library returns us the actual charge object. So we create, gonna create. It really looks like an interview. So when you are interviewing for the job, they usually ask you to do like pair programming, and this is what it looks like. Talking and coding at the same time takes, I think, a little bit of brain power. And I say, yeah, so I'm going to store it inside HashMap. So here, and I'm going to create, let's, instead of typing, so I have here ready, I'm going to just copy and paste to save time. Okay. Charge DTO. So this is what we're creating. And then inside, once we assign, so our charge DTO will have amount, currency description, and Stripe token fields. And we're gonna return the charge object. So we call the charge class and create a factory method. And then we pass it charge params. Create complaints because it throws an exception. We need to add those exceptions. It throws these multiple exceptions. So we need to add those exceptions. So yeah, so this is how we talk to our service. Now we need to actually create the charge DTO itself. So I'm gonna create another class, charge DTO. Okay. So this is a typical data transfer object. It doesn't do much. So we're gonna use data annotation from Lombok saying that we're using Lombok and we don't want this. We don't want to deal with writing setters and getters. So gonna have public enum for currency. We'll be using, let's say, two types of currencies here, Euro and USD. And we'll have multiple fields. So we're gonna go string description. Gonna write description. Just let me quickly check if we have any comments. No comments yet. I'm gonna resume. Just please interrupt me. Feel free to interrupt me if anything is not clear. Okay, so I'm gonna write description, and we also need amount. So amount is displayed in cents. So Stripe does, when dealing with amounts, it uses cents. Let's say we are charging the user for $50, right? So instead of sending assigning 50 to amount or with cents, what Stripe does is it multiplies the 50 to 100 and it assigns 5,000. Okay, so you can say represented in cents. represented in sense, okay. And private, and we also need currency to be part of charge DTO, and we also want Stripe email that we'll be asking from users, and Stripe token. Okay, now we have our charge DTO created, and we can go to service and see that charge DTO, this is, we pass this charge DTO as part of methods call. So whenever we call charge, so we want to create this charge DTO object and pass it to, and then retrieve these fields, and then send it as part of, and send these fields to Stripe's charge API, so we can create the charge object. You remember that everything in Stripe API is an object, including this charge concept is also an object. So this is a layer of abstraction that we receive from Stripe. And now, okay, now we need to create a controller where this actual charge happens. So for that, we need to create actual charge controller. So we have charge DTO, charge controller. So here, so we need to annotate it as a controller. And we have, and for that we need to now inject the service that we have created here, Stripe service, right? So because this is annotated as service, we can inject it anywhere inside our application. So we can say Stripe service, and we can inject it here using AutoWire. So now we're injecting bean. As you see, so now this is treated as a bean, Spring Bean, and this we can navigate where it's auto-wired. So here, so we can Spring helps us with navigation here, so we can see where this bean is coming from, where its definition is. And now we need to create a method where we actually do the charge. So the charging happens whenever some endpoint is invoked. So endpoint is invoked whenever we call like charge whenever we go to browser and call this charge endpoint. So for that, I created a method charge here, and now I need to annotate it. So this annotation will be mapped to post method, because whenever this endpoint is called, we want this endpoint, this request to this endpoint to contain about some like JSON payload in its body. For that happen, we need to use post method, post mapping, and we call it charge. And now we need to, when we call charge methods, we want to make sure that so we receive charge DTO details as part of method signature, as well as model, because we want to pass these details back to view, right? So that's why we need to create these two these two parameters. Charge DTO will be one of them, and we have model. Yeah, and now we need to enrich our charge DTO with additional data. So we can, it's optional, obviously, so we can use some description, sample description. And we can set currency. So we can use, we are setting euro as our currency, and now it's time for to use our Stripe service, which we created here. So if you see here, we are not actually calling charge method yet anywhere. So this is the time where we actually call it. So we receive charge object in response. Let's okay. So we have already injected Stripe service here using AutoWire. Sorry, Stripe service, and we can call its charge method. And when we call, we can pass charge DTO here. So this charge DTO will be populated already in this case, so we can be sure that charge DTO contains all the data that we want for Stripe's for Stripe API, so it can create and give us back the charge object. So here it complains again, unhandled exception. Let's add those exceptions. Okay. Yeah. And now once we have a charge object created, so we can enrich our model with details of these details from charge object. So we can retrieve ID, because whenever we create the Stripe creates the charge object, it assigns ID to it. So we can call charge get. We can get ID. I think I'm calling the wrong method. Add attribute. Okay, here we go. Model can add attributes. This time it's status. Let's say we also want status. Charge get status. Attribute, we want a charge ID. We already have it, charge ID. We don't need. Yes, and let's say we also want some information about balance. Balance, charge, get, balance, transaction. So this returns us string. So it should be okay. And now we return when we call this, invoke this charge endpoint. So we want to return. We want to pass this model to to view. So we can call this view as a result. We haven't created result view yet. As you see, there are no view defined yet. So I'm gonna go ahead and create templates here. New. So I'm calling it templates because I'll be using TinyLeaf template engine to render the UI. So let me create file. Yeah, so it will be results HTML. So it's empty now, but I already have like a running application besides me. So I'm gonna copy my content from there and paste it to save time. So now, because I'm not familiar too much with TinyLeaf, so I'm using an example here from some other source. So what it does is, it has, it's typical HTML, it's like head and body part, and this if condition tells that if the result that we receive from Stripe API contains any type of errors, so it will be displayed in here under this div, and it will be displayed in red, okay? And if there are no such error at all, right? So it goes to th unless, then it displays a favorable result in green color, and the data that we receive from charge object details will be displayed in here. ID status. We don't need this charge ID here. So ID status. Oops. Yeah, ID status and balance transaction ID. So that's the data that will be displayed on the screen, and there will be a link again to checkout again, which we'll call this checkout endpoint, which we haven't created yet, so we'll create it also. So yeah, and now we need to actually create so we created our charge controller, just checking in what is left. So we created a charge controller, and so we also need we also need our checkout controller. So this checkout controller is needed when user logs into the web, when user is presented with price and this pay button. Okay, so we need to create this checkout controller as well. So let me create checkout controller as well. Checkout controller. So we have checkout controller running, created. And so again, we need to annotate it as a controller. Controller, okay. And let me check comments if I haven't checked. I was fully focused on streaming. Okay, when does this start? Well, it started about 2 hours ago. We're about to finish it now. We have 15 minutes left. Yes, recording will be available, I believe. Yes, it will be available. Okay, let me go back to my coding. So we are dealing with checkout controller. So what we need to do is, so again, we'll be, so when we are calling this checkout controller, when we're calling the checkout endpoint, so we want that controller to handle this request. So for this happen, we create a method checkout. And so as usual, it will have model built in. So this is built in as part of Spring framework. And so in order to, because the goal of this controller is to pass attributes that we captured, that attributes to checkout view. So this checkout view will help Stripe to actually make the charge for us, to create the charge for us. Okay, so we need add attribute here. So we need the amount here. So we're let's say we're charging user for $80, right? So 80 times, I'm multiplying it by 100 because, as I said before, Stripe deals with cents, not dollar amounts. We need Stripe. This time we deal with Stripe's public key, and we don't have it created yet. We'll create it soon. And again, we add detail here, another attribute, currency. Currency we have defined here in our currency DTO that we'll be using euros or dollars, depending on what let's say euros this time. And we return this to checkout view. Say checkout view. And as you see, we need to map this to certain endpoint. Request mapping. So this is triggered when we call checkout endpoint from our web page, and we need to be able to provide supply Stripe public key. So again, so we create string Stripe public key, right? And we already have public and private keys defined here. So so what we're gonna do is we just copy from here and check out controller and use value annotation, right? Value annotation and use a dollar sign. I forgot dollar sign here. Oops, dollar sign in here. Okay. So now we have like minimal functionality almost ready to test. But before that, we have this checkout unimplemented yet. So we're going to create another template. Checkout template, checkout HTML. In here, so we're gonna, I have code already ready for HTML page. Let me paste it here. Okay, we have to refactor here, rename HTML. Okay. So yeah, now we have this checkout page ready, and it has a form. So this form displays like price and currency information, and it will also have a button displayed. So that button will be rendered by script here. So this checkout script, JavaScript script, is it comes from Stripe's. It comes from Stripe's web resource. So this is like custom handled by Stripe. So it provides us all these buttons. What we're displaying is just price and currency here. And yeah, that's about it. Like, let's try to run this, and I'm gonna open my page again. So we so let's try to execute this. Okay, our and enable annotation. Okay, let me restart it. Okay, our Spring application started. Let me switch to web page. I'm gonna stop it because I don't know. I cannot share both application, like IntelliJ interface and Chrome tab at the same time for some reason. So I'm gonna stop it. Present share screen from my Chrome tab. So this is from old running of application. So let me go ahead and and actually type here. It says white label error page. Yeah, because there's nothing mapped to index. Yeah, so we need to call checkout endpoint. So now when we call checkout endpoints, so let me paste it here. So I'm calling this endpoint checkout localhost 8080 checkout. So whenever I call this endpoint, I'm presented with the price that I want to charge user for and the card and the button. So this button is presented, generated by Stripe JavaScript. And when we create this, we are given uh, a pop-up window. So this is given to us by Stripe. It says, as you see, it says powered by Stripe, right? And we can just like provide our email. And for card numbers, so I put 42, 42, 42, 42, because this is the test card number given to us by Stripe. So that information is available. Stripe test cards, right? So if you go to this page, hello, we have people just joining. And if you go to this testing page, you will see that there are multiple cards available for use. So 27, 93. So yeah, it says success. It gives us back the feedback saying that transaction was successful. And now we check out again. This time we check out with test 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 data where the transaction will be declined. So there is a special card number where we can use to simulate that. 2027, 1, 2, 3. Okay, your card was declined. So yeah, this is expected. So now on our side, on the dashboard, can you see it? Dashboard. So I have my dashboard where I can track how the transactions went. So I can see load. Yeah, today's. I'm interested in today. So we have these two transactions have just happened. Those like 4-1 because those 56, 56, 57, 57, right? So this one was successful. As you see, I'm calling Stripe's v1/charges endpoint to actually submit the charge to that credit card number or debit card number. And it was 200. So Stripe returned me 200 saying that, okay, transaction was successful. And this one, it returned 402, meaning card declined. This is expected. This is what I wanted to simulate. So I used special card number, which declines all the time the transactions. So this is also, again, worked as expected. There are like details that Stripe returns to us, like in the response body, saying that card declined, for example. It's a generic decline. As you see, yeah, I can, if you go to developer section, under logs, you can see all the interactions your Spring application has done with Stripe API. So we have 1 minute left. I just want to wrap things up here. Yeah. It took me quite a while to understand Stripe API. Actually, it's a bit sophisticated API, but with practice, I think we can crack any challenges together. So yeah, thanks for joining me, and I'd like to thank everyone who is still watching. I see there are like a few people still watching me. Thank you very much for staying with me for 2 hours. And yeah, it was nice to be part of MLH, to host these sessions. I learn a lot, and I'm happy to share what I've learned with MLH community. So yeah, I'll hope to see you again in the next sessions, and enjoy the rest of your day. I'm gonna end broadcast here. Okay, keep learning. Okay, bye bye for now.